That's good. Again, welcome. Thank you for being with us and spending this time on Christmas Eve together. This past Sunday, I was up at one of our other campuses in Wyoming, and Felipe was here, and so we have these three campuses between the between the three campuses. We have three campuses. Isn't that strange? But we have the three campuses, so it's exciting to be able to get to visit some of the other ones. I spoke up there this past Sunday. By the way, if you don't know who I am, my name is Mike Smith. I've had a really hard week, so I look kind of rugged. But no, Mike is serving at the church in Provo now, and we're really excited for him. And if you haven't been here in a while and you're wondering who are you, my name is Dana, and I'm the new campus pastor here. So excited to be here and meet with you. Anyway, I was up at this church up in Wyoming. It's kind of in Lyman, Mountain View, Ury, Fort Bridger, right in that area. And so we had a great time up there. After the service, I was visiting with some of the little kids. There were just some 5, 6-year-old kids, and I was asking them about Christmas, if they're excited about it, and then I just asked them if they'd been naughty or nice. And so this one little 6-year-old boy, he said, "I've been NIS." And I was trying to figure out exactly what he was trying to tell me, but he was actually spelling nice. So he was proud of how nice that he'd been. And then this little girl, just the cutest little girl, 5 years old, big giant glasses. And I said, "How about you? Have you been naughty or nice?" She said, "Actually, I'd say somewhere in between." And I thought, boy, that speaks where a lot of us can understand. And, there's that Christmas song, "You Better Watch Out," okay? Santa's watching, and he's making a list, and he's going to find out who's naughty or nice. Maybe that's why kids sometimes get a little bit afraid of Santa Claus. Here's a couple of pictures that just show you a little bit of the fear. How many of you have experienced something like that in your family? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Hey, I was doing a little bit of research, and I discovered that according to the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, both male and female reindeer grow antlers. In the summer, they typically do that. Female reindeer keep their antlers throughout until the next spring when they actually give birth, but male reindeer drop their antlers at the beginning of winter. I want you to think about the implications of that for a second, because you've all seen pictures of Santa's reindeer, right? Okay? But they all have antlers. So that means that all of them, Rudolph to Blitzen, were actually female reindeer. Someone has said we should have known. Only a woman, while pregnant, would be able to drag a fat man in a red velvet suit around the world in one night and not get lost. Tonight I want to take a look at the Magi for a couple of minutes with you, the wise men that came to Bethlehem that first Christmas. Someone pondered what the first Christmas would have been like if it would have been wise women from the east instead of wise men. And so here's what it would have looked like. They would have asked for directions, made it to Bethlehem on time, helped with the delivery, cleaned up the stable, made a decent meal, and brought lots of practical gifts. You know that Christmas carol, "Do You Hear What I Hear?" Goes on to say, a child shivers in the cold, let us bring him silver and gold. Well, the wise woman would have said, he's shivering in the cold, let us bring him a blanket. And it just makes a lot more sense. But anyway, the scripture I want to look at you with is Matthew chapter 2, verse 1 and 2. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where's the one who's been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." That's pretty significant, isn't it? We've come to worship him. The Magi were from Babylon. They were a select group of priests who functioned as the religious, civil, and political council to the ancient kings of Media and Persia. They're kind of like the ancient equivalent of Jedi Knights. And this group of Magi who searched for the newborn king were men who had been influenced actually by the Jews, and the Jews were looking forward to the coming of the King of the Jews, the Messiah. So the fact that they took such an overwhelming trip to do this just shows that they believed in the God of the Jews. And they would have learned about this God, these Magi would have learned about him from the Jews who had been taken captive out of their own homeland and kidnapped all the way to Babylon. That's about 1,000 miles. So you think about how devastating your life would be under those kind of circumstances. Well, here they are, and yet this should speak very loudly to us that even when our world falls apart, we can still carry on and be a light that shines the way for people to come to know Jesus. That's what the Jewish people did, and here are these magi who are impacted by this. And years and years and years later, then when Jesus is born, they're keen on this whole thing. Since the Magi were looking forward to the coming of the king, God sent them a supernatural signal that confirmed the arrival of Jesus. It was a unique star. We're not exactly sure what that star was. Dr. Hugh Ross, an astronomer, suggests that the star may have been a phenomenon called a recurring nova. That's a star that undergoes several explosions, emitting bursts of brightness several times over a period of months or even years. But however he did it, God used the star to signal to the Magi that the king had been born. And that compelled them to take this difficult journey that covered 1,000 miles of desolate sand and desert and likely took them a few months. In our earlier service before this one, the 4 o'clock service, the couple that did the reading, Rock White, he is getting ready to do a big journey on the Appalachian Trail, start to finish, 2,200 miles. He's not going to do it this winter. He's going to wait until when it warms up in the spring. But it's a huge, huge journey. It'll take him 6 months to do that, and there's a lot of preparation that goes into all that, obviously. Well, you can be sure that there was a lot of preparation that had to go into this trip. And these guys, with their carrying the gifts that they did bring, they had an escort of some, armed soldiers that would help them and keep them safe. Now, close reading of this text seems to suggest that initially they saw the star in the sky, and they set out knowing that this was the sign of the Messiah, and they knew that he would be born. Since he's the King of the Jews, they headed to Jerusalem, the center of Israel. And so that's why they get there, and they may not have seen the star for quite a while. Thus the stop in Jerusalem, and they ask King Herod about where this newborn king actually is. After consulting, Herod consults with religious scholars. Where is this king going to be born? They said that a prophecy was there that indicated that he would be born in Bethlehem. So in verse 9 of chapter 2 of Matthew, after they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star that they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold and of incense and of myrrh, not murder, myrrh. So they bowed down and they worshipped this child. They'd not come just to satisfy their curiosity, but to worship him just as they would worship God. Now listen, I know this season it gets crazy, and there's a lot that gets shoved on our plates this time of year, which causes a lot of stress for us, and sometimes lots of frustration. And sometimes, in fact, people get depressed at this time of year, very depressed. And a lot of that is centered around the expectations that they have. We say, have a Merry Christmas, which can seem like a huge struggle to somebody that's really wrestling with issues in their life. How do you be merry when you're hurting because you're all alone, or your family can't all be together for Christmas, or you're battling health issues, or you lost your job, or your spouse, or you're in a financial hole so deep you don't know if you're ever going to get out? How do you have a Merry Christmas when you're stressed because of your relatives? If you're sitting next to them, gently put your hand on their shoulder. Or if you're worried that you didn't give the right gift, or you may not receive the gift that you wanted. Our expectations can cause us a lot of disappointment. I like the middle-aged woman who posted her Christmas wish list on the refrigerator so her husband could read it. And rather than list certain items that she desired, she simply requested this: something that will make me look sexy and beautiful. On Christmas morning, she expected to open a package with fancy lingerie inside. To her surprise, he gave her a Peloton exercise bike instead. Wow. Well, having a Merry Christmas isn't dependent on what you get or who's with you or how you feel or the absence of stressful or even heartbreaking circumstances. Think about that first Christmas. Shattered dreams for Mary and Joseph. A long, exhausting, difficult journey for a woman in advanced stages of pregnancy. No comfortable accommodations to sleep in, to give birth in. Only a manger, a feeding trough. Think about the filth that was there and the stench that would have been in there. So were they disappointed in that first Christmas? Was Mary disappointed? Was Joseph disappointed? Were the shepherds disappointed? Were the wise men disappointed? Not at all. You know why? Because the news was, for unto you is born this day a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. When you're looking for the right things, you won't be disappointed. I just heard this quote last night. It said, through Christmas, God is telling an epic story of love, peace on earth, and goodwill toward men. And if it seems dark sometimes, and there is no peace, and there is no goodwill, it's just because the story isn't over yet. Your story's not over yet. The big story's not over yet. It's begun. And now we are part of the story. What's going on in our lives? Our opportunity to come and worship the King and to shine, to take our light and shine for others. So as I close up this portion, and we're going to move into some Christmas worship here in just a second, I'd ask you this. What do you want out of Christmas? What would make it wonderful? Is it snow? Would that do it for you? Having the family together? How about having the family together and being happy at the same time? Maybe that's it. Holiday spirit? Finding that perfect present? Well, the wise men show us how to make this Christmas better by showing us the right things to look for. Do you remember what they were looking for? It was the opportunity to worship the King of Kings. We have come to worship him. That's what they said. We're looking for him because we've come to worship. It's Jesus. Jesus is what it's all about. Jesus is the reason for the season.